Welcome back to another episode of Two Parents and a Podcast. You guys, today is part 2 with Emily Oster. If you missed the first episode, it was last week on Monday, and what we were talking about was all things pregnancy, right? Like, can you eat sushi? Can you get Botox? What about deli meats? And she gave us all the answers. I love the way she talks. She's very direct. So if that episode applies to you or somebody you know, that was last week. This week, we are talking about all the firsts you encounter in the first couple of years when you have your baby, right? So screen time, discipline, formula versus breastfeeding was an interesting one. And so we dive into all of that with her. She's incredible. I love the way she answers questions. She's direct. And if you don't know who Emily is, even though I think she needs no introduction, she's a best-selling author. She's an economist, and she's the data-driven voice behind parentdata.org, where she helps parents cut through fear-based advice, understand what research actually says, and make confident decisions that work for their family without guilt or judgment. So without further ado, you guys, let's get right into this episode with Emily. Okay, guys, we're back with Emily Oster. You're welcome, because I know we all have a lot of questions for her. The first episode was all about pregnancy and birth, and now we're going into debunking myths and decision-making guides for early parenting years, which you know a lot about.
I'm so excited.
We're gonna go screen time, breast milk, sleep, childcare, punishment, and if we have time, vaccines.
Okay, wow, you're hitting all of the very top topics.
We were trying to hit that because these are all things we're genuinely interested in, right?
Yeah, I mean these are the topics every parent is interested in.
If you're a parent, you care. Okay, are there outstanding benefits to breastfeeding your child, or no? The data is not.
There are some small benefits to breast milk. There is some reduced risk of gastrointestinal illnesses in the first year. Some small impacts possibly on allergies or eczema. There are some benefits if the baby's in the NICU, some sort of larger digestive benefits, maybe a little bit of an effect on ear infections, and that's basically it.
What about antibodies, though, to sicknesses, if you have one?
So, you do pass antibodies. The effects are probably smaller than most people think. This is probably part of what's going on in the gastrointestinal results, that, if you have a stomach bug, you're passing the antibodies. But those antibodies are passive. So your baby is swallowing the breast milk, and it's going to their stomach, where their stomach acid does all kinds of stuff to it. So it's different than the kinds of antibodies that you would share if you got sick while you were pregnant, when actually your baby would have circulating antibodies. So the antibodies they're just probably not that important. And most of these long-term things, all of the long-term things people say, like breast milk makes your kid smarter, makes your kid thinner, has all kinds of other impacts. Those are just not supported in good data.
Yeah, so the long-term effects I can really see, because in this room there's 5 of us. Who knows? I don't even know if I was formula or breastfed. I know I was breastfed some, but I don't know if I was combo fed.
Me too. No idea.
Like, I don't think anybody in the room knows, and look, we're all like fully functioning.
Right.
I did see, though, for the first year, I did feel as though breastfeeding her, and I breastfed for 6 months, and then I combo fed her, and she never got sick. She was never sick the first year, and I did feel like that was cause and effect, but maybe I'm wrong.
Was she in daycare?
No.
That's why
she's in a nanny share.
Yeah, she didn't get sick because she didn't go to daycare.
Maybe that's what it was.
I mean, not that daycare is great. It's in many ways, but I think amazing. A huge share of the variation in illness is exposure to other kids.
But she did fly 52 times.
Very different than having other kids put their hands in your mouth
and pacifiers and things like that.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So maybe that's what it was.
And I mean, this is sort of like, just in general, when we look at the data, the illness rates really aren't very different.
And so, is there any data that you see formula? How do I ask that question? Like, formula versus breast milk. There's there's no overwhelming supporting data that shows breast milk is better.
So, I mean, I think that's not quite right, because there are these small benefits. Okay. So I think what I would, if you sort of summarize this, I would say there are some small short-term benefits to breastfeeding, particularly in the first year, but they are nowhere near as large as people are told that they are. And I think that's kind of the important point, because many many women hear a rhetoric about breast milk, which is like, this is the opportunity to give your kid the best start. And if you don't do this, your kid is going to be bad in these ways. And like, this is like you, and you have failed. And I think that's a very different message than like, you know, this is something that you might like. A lot of people do it. You know, it has some sort of short-term benefits for illness. You know, they aren't enormous, but they're there and you might try it, which is kind of the message I think we should send people, as opposed to like, if you don't do this, you've already failed and it's day 3.
So the reason I like what you're saying, while breastfeeding was very hard on me, but I did it. So I'm like, okay, well, you got to ask yourself for what. One thing that we're huge proponents of is fed is best. Happy mom is the best.
Happy mom, happy baby.
Happy mom, happy baby, no question. And I do think that there's a lot of negative rhetoric around using formula, which I don't agree with at all.
One of the main reasons I wrote Crib Sheet, which is my second book about early parenting, is the number of dads I heard from about breastfeeding. And they would write and they would say, you know, my wife loves your first book. Like, she really listens to you. And like, she is killing herself to breastfeed our kid and it isn't working. And she's really sad. And if you could just tell her that it's okay to stop, like, I think she would listen to you.
Beautiful.
And I got enough of that. Eventually, I wrote this other book.
I think it's a beautiful message, and we try to do episodes on it too, where we have formula people. You know, we had a milk specialist on, and she was like, "No, both are good. Both are good. Especially now we have more formula options.
It's just both are good.
Yeah. Okay, good. Yeah. All right, great. I mean, I'm going to do the breast milk again, round 2 and 3
I
and
found
4.
it much easier on the second one, actually.
Okay, good.
It was just like much easier to figure. Like, it was like, I don't know. I just like, because I kind of knew what I was doing.
Yeah, but I'm going to put a whole lot less pressure on myself. And I always like to say, like, fed is best, because mom, we cannot be killing mom.
Yeah.
If you're a last minute shopper like me, and I know so many of you are, you know the feeling. The shelves are running low and you're out of ideas. But you guys, Aura Frames is the best gift, because it's the gift that keeps on giving. It's a digital picture frame that you're going to give to somebody. Maybe they live far away from you. Maybe you don't live in the same house as them, but you want to send them pictures and live updates of what you're doing. Aura Frames is the best thing ever, you guys. You can upload unlimited photos and videos. You can preload the photos before the frame ships, so when they open it, they already have the photos on there. And you can share photos and videos effortlessly straight from your phone all year long, you guys. It is so simple. So for a limited time, save on the perfect gift by visiting auraframes.com to get $35 off Aura's best-selling Carver matte frames, named #1 by Wirecutter, by using promo code 2parents at checkout. That's auraframes.com, promo code 2parents. This deal is exclusive to listeners, and frames sell out fast, so order yours now to get it in time for the holidays. Support the show by mentioning us at checkout. Terms and conditions apply. Alcohol while breastfeeding.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. So what I did was, we went out one night and had, I think, 3 margaritas, probably 4. And I was breastfeeding at the time. So I made a video, I made a TikTok. And I was like, I'm going to do the test of it. So I had my little Frida strips. I tested my breast milk. It came back like, there's alcohol in this. Then I filmed myself pouring it down the drain. It was a learning moment for me. And all the comments, they were really nice, but they were just like, #1, most definitely never pour it out, use it in the bath. Okay, obviously. But a lot of nurses were in there just like, they were like, if you can see your baby, you can feed your baby. Like, it's not going to get through to it.
Yeah, I think the way to think about that is the amount of the sort of concentration of alcohol in your breast milk is the same as the concentration in your blood. And so so they've done these studies where like they give people they've done sort of studies where you have someone have like 4 tequila shots in an hour. Which is too much. You're not going to parent well after that at all, or feel good at all. But even with that, the concentration in breast milk is very low, like comparable to what you get in juice, basically.
That's what they said.
Yeah, and so it's just, the concentration is just not high, and so it's fine to feed your baby with that.
So some people will ask me, like, can I have a glass of wine?
Yes,
and
definitely.
I'm like, I believe so, yes.
Yes, definitely.
If you put a test strip in apple juice, it's going to
read
high.
These test strips are pretty, I would not use the test strips. I think that logic is better than the test strips.
Okay. There we go. Sorry, Frida. Okay, sleep. You are for the method or against the method, and what does the data show about cry it out?
I think cry it out is something that should be in people's toolboxes. Okay. It's not for everybody. But it does, the data does show that on average it improves infant sleep it improves parent sleep and parent happiness. And we look at long-term impacts, both short and long-term impacts on things like attachment and so on. We don't see any negative impacts. And so not everyone is going to choose this method, but I think it should be on the table for people.
So you don't see, the data does not show any negative impacts.
No.
But how do you get data on something like that?
So there are some randomized trials of this where they bring people in and they randomize some of them to sleep train and some of them not, and they follow their kids for many years.
Wow. So cortisol spikes and things like that are all checked in this.
Short term. Yeah. So, and then they, we have some of these studies where they sort of show, like, you see cortisol spikes when babies cry, but cortisol is not always it's not like uniformly a terrible thing. We have cortisol spikes and there isn't, when we sort of look at this long-term stuff, we don't see any negative impacts, which is kind of the thing you would worry about. Like, that there is something, kids look different later, that there's some other negative impact. That's what people are
how
worried
large
about.
are these studies? Because this one's really surprising to me. We didn't do Cry It Out. We were very fortunate, though, that we weren't put in a position that we actually needed to make the decision, because she was a pretty...
We did the 5, 10, 15 method.
Yeah.
5,
pretty easy
pick her up,
sleeper,
or
but
rubber belly.
Yeah.
Intuitively, it did it did make sense to us that there could be some negative effects to letting her cry for super long extended periods of time.
Yes. I mean, but that's why we have data. That's why we have data.
That's why he's asking.
But that's why I want to get
why he wants
how
to know.
how broad, how big are these studies?
These are several hundreds of kids, and so they're not. So I think it's not. If you're sort of saying the thing that I would need was a study with millions of kids with incredibly detailed, we don't have that. We do have a lot of observations from the world. Huge share of kids. People do some sleep training. There's a sort of trade-off on the other side, which is they do sleep better, and we know that sleep is important for development. And so if you sort of there's almost a potential countervailing of the sort of we're trading, maybe you're trading 3 days of a cortisol spike for months and months of better overall sleep hygiene.
Yeah, that's where I think it's interesting. That's why we want to talk to people like you, because we don't know. We just go off of a gut.
And so,
but I think what's interesting about this, I think that for some people it's look, I'm worried about this. I'm worried that, about yes, you told me there are these studies, but the studies are not perfect and this is not for me. And I think sometimes with sleep training, we give people the impression this is the only way to operate your life. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that's true either. And you may say sleep training is not for me, which is okay.
Yeah, I guess what I was trying to get to is, and I don't know, this may be now getting too sleep specialist, but I feel like there's a commonality we have with a couple of our friends where their kids, they just cry. And so you say 3-4 nights, let's say our next kid is a really, really, really bad sleeper. Mm-hmm. Leaving them in that crib for 2 weeks until they figure it out
is okay.
So I think this is a really hard question to answer, because if you said is that okay? Do people do that and their kids aren't yes. Most of the time does not take anywhere near that amount of time to do this if you are doing consistently. I think a lot of pediatricians, if you went to Tribeca Pediatrics in New York, they'd be at 12 weeks old, close the door and don't come back no matter what. There are some sort of people are going to tell you something very extreme about this. I think what I would say there is that's not sustainable. It's not sustainable to be exhausted all the time.
Yeah.
This isn't the only solution to that.
Yeah.
So, depending on the age of your baby, another solution that many people find more palatable is co-sleeping. So a lot of kids who won't sleep well alone in the crib will sleep fine with their kids in the bed. Co-sleeping is not for everybody either, but after, several months, it's pretty safe. And it works for a lot of people. And I often I think if for many families, they find you sort of either need to, if your kid is not a great sleeper, you kind of need to either sleep train or co-sleep, because the sort of middle option of getting up every hour for 2 years is like infeasible for people.
Yeah. No, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I agree with that. Okay. Childcare. A lot of people will say, you know, if you have childcare during the day, if your kid goes to daycare, or if you have a nanny, that has a negative effect on the child.
That is not supported by the data.
The data shows what?
The data shows that, high quality childcare, meaning responsive caregivers, not watching television all day, safe environment, shows outcomes very similar to being home. You see sort of more time in childcare before school slightly improves kids' school readiness. More time in childcare slightly worsens their behavior early in school. Those differences basically all wash out by kind of early elementary age. And so really the decision about like what kind of childcare to have should be about what works for your family, what works for your budget, what works for you logistically. Kids do get, the first time your kid goes to a childcare setting, they will get sick pretty often. And whether that's when they're a baby, whether that's when they're 2, whether that's when they're 5, the first time they're around a lot of other kids, they will get that first like winter season, they will get sick a lot. And that's just worth knowing.
Interesting.
Totally.
Yeah.
But
and it's like 1. So if they get sick a lot when they're 2, then, when they show up in kindergarten at 5, they're not going to get as sick as somebody who didn't have all of this illness when they were 2.
okay, so get it. They're gonna pay their dues.
They're going to pay their dues.
Okay. Yeah, I love this take because I think like number 1, working parents, like you have no other option. And so the worst thing you can hear is like, that's bad for your kid. But number 2, I think like it makes for happier parents. Totally. If it's what you choose. There are stay-at-home moms who probably would love doing it, right? But I do think like
different things are working for different people.
Totally.
And I think the way that people should approach this is much closer to like what do the adults in the family want? What is the right work hours for all of the adults in the household? What is going to make this work as a family, as opposed to like how can we obsess about what's best for our kid and not think about everybody else, which is not helpful.
Right. And so I think this is very helpful. I also think, I think everything you're saying is very helpful because I think a lot of parents are overwhelmed. They want to sleep train, but they don't know if they can. Their breastfeeding is mentally destroying them. They need some people need a bit of permission to know like you can lean into formula. So I think this is really helpful.
I think people need permission to like think about these decisions carefully, make the decisions that work for them, knowing that there are many good choices, and then try hard because you have thought. Like try hard to tell yourself, I thought about the right decision for me, and that may not be the right decision for someone else. And that doesn't mean that my decision is wrong or their decision is wrong. I think there's like, that's very hard.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Punishment. What do you think about spanking?
I do not think that spanking is good. I think we have reasonable data that spanking is associated with worse long-term outcomes for kids, including worse behavior.
Which once you really start reading into it, makes complete and total sense. But what are some supporting causes for that?
So I think this is a thing we see in the data. You can sort of track kind of kids and look at spanking and not spanking and track them over time. And it doesn't seem like kids who are spanked improve their behavior more. And in fact, if anything, it seems to worsen behavior. There is also a lot of good evidence about alternative approaches to discipline, which seem to work in terms of improving behavior and family functioning, which do not involve physical violence.
And so it feels like as a society, we have reached a consensus now that
about half of American families spank their kids.
Half. Oh, wow.
We
looked
did
at
a poll.
Sorry.
We did
Oh,
this. I was going to say, we did our
we
audience.
We have not arrived at that.
And we were like,
We're non-spankers.
Right.
For the record. But what are alternative parenting methods that the data shows works well? So spanking doesn't work. What does work well?
Yeah. So I think the thing we have the most evidence on is sort of behavior modification programs with systems of rewards and punishments. So like 1, 2, 3 magic is the one that I like the best, that I think works where we have the most evidence. And so this is like a kind of fairly simple approach. There's a book. But it's like your kid is doing a behavior that is not good. You count, that's 1, 2, 3, and then there's a consequence, which is typically a timeout, although you could do something else. But the idea of sort of staying consistent, having a consistent system, and having some like warnings and then punishments, that is what works. Basically, all school-based programs are like this too.
You remove them from the actions.
Yeah, remove them from the action. In these, generally, kids are given an opportunity to remove themselves first, and then ultimately you remove them. And if they don't stop, you remove them and take them into someplace else. And there's a rest period, and that's it.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the main thing we learn from this is that you need to be consistent. You need to be able to consistently do the same thing every time.
Okay.
So a successful like discipline behavior program is one that you can always implement. And it could be kind of like, there are a lot of different versions of that, but it needs to be something you can implement the same every time, because that's what kids respond well to, is the idea of like, I know what's going to happen if I do this, and I know that it's going to follow through. The example I always give is, I once was on an airplane, and the kid was kicking the back of some kid behind was kicking the back of someone's chair. And their parent said to them, if you keep doing that, we're going to leave you on the airplane. That's actually a very poor discipline approach, because you're not going to do that. You're not going to leave them on the airplane. And so don't say things that you're not going to be able to do.
Right. Don't threat. Okay. I did read this once, like, the dad had said, if you don't do X, Y, Z, then we're not leaving the house all
right.
day.
Or I'm going to turn the car around. You better be prepared to turn the car around.
He missed work. He was like, well, I should never have threatened this thing that I can't follow through with, which makes a lot of sense. Empty threats. No. Guys, let's talk about Nutrafol, because there is nothing more frustrating than wanting thicker, longer, healthier hair. And I have taken the Women's Balance and their postpartum, and I am telling you, they are incredible. The holidays can get busy and overwhelming quickly, and thoughtful gifts that encourage slowing down and prioritizing self-care always stand out. With Nutrafol, you can give the gift of stronger and faster growing hair, an ideal gift for anyone who deserves a boost of confidence and science-backed support heading into the new year. Thinking of thoughtful gifts becomes tougher each year, and Nutrafol makes it easy. It's thoughtful, practical, and meaningful. Healthy, stronger hair is a gift that keeps on giving all year long, even past the holiday season. Nutrafol is the #1 dermatologist recommended hair growth supplement brand, trusted by over 1.5 million people. See thicker, stronger, faster growing hair with less shedding in just 3 to 6 months. This holiday season, Nutrafol is the perfect gift for anyone on your list. Your mom and your aunt going through menopause, a friend who just had a baby and is experiencing postpartum hair shedding, your husband or father who relies on his baseball hat to cover up, or yourself or anyone looking to support their overall hair health. Give the gift of confidence this holiday season with Nutrafol. Whether you're treating yourself or someone on your list, visibly healthier, thicker hair is the gift that keeps on giving. Right now, Nutrafol is offering our listeners $10 off your first month subscription plus free shipping when you go to Nutrafol.com and use promo code 2parents. That's Nutrafol.com, promo code 2parents for $10 off. You guys, it's the holidays, which means you've got those sweet tooth cravings, but maybe you don't want the sweet hangover that comes with it. Enter Kachava protein shakes. You guys, I am obsessed with the chocolate mint flavor. I have it in the morning, but I am not afraid to have it at night whenever those holiday sweet tooth cravings come on. Kachava is a whole body meal with plant-based protein that actually tastes delicious. I'm telling you, it is so good. There's 25 grams of 100% plant-based protein. Adding more plant-based protein to your diet is a fantastic way to nourish your body and feel full. There's 6 other indulgent flavors: chocolate, vanilla, chai, matcha, coconut acai, and strawberry. There's no artificial flavors, colors, or sweeteners. It's non-GMO. There's no soy, no animal products, no gluten, and no preservatives. Calm the holiday chaos. Go to Kachava.com and use code 2parents for 15% off your next order. That's Kachava, Kachava.com. Code 2parents for 15% off. Okay, so screen time. You go on screen time. What's the question?
Well, screen time it's top of mind for us.
We haven't done it yet.
We read The Anxious Generation.
Sure.
That book really landed. But would love to hear your thoughts on screen time. Where do you think we have it right as society? We don't. Things parents should be focused on, not focused on, and we can share how we're thinking about it.
Yeah. So let me say sort of 2 broad things. So one, I would really separate like the kind of passive screen time, shows that you're going to be thinking about for your baby, for your 14-month kids, for your toddler, from the like anxious generation stuff. Because, Instagram, TikTok, this is a set of things you are going to be dealing with. Maybe, I don't know what it's going to be like when your kid's 14, but it's a pretty different set of questions. For now, when I talk to parents about the kind of passive screen time of small children, I think that rather than telling people to think about this as like good or bad, you want to think about what is it substituting for. So thinking about screen time as something that probably your kid will do some of, but if they're watching 9 hours of television a day, they're not doing any of the other things we know they should do. We know kids need some outside time. They need some time playing with the parent. They need some, looking at book time. They need you want to sit at a meal with them, whatever is the things you want to kind of scaffold in your day that you know are important. And then there are probably some times in there where you'd be like, yeah, it's okay to have a little bit of screen time, because it is not substituting for something else that's good. So the thing I'll often tell people is like, if it's 30 minutes of Miss Rachel or 30 minutes while you're trying to cook dinner and they're screaming at you and you are screaming back at them, it would be better for them to watch Miss Rachel, because what it's substituting for is conflict. And what it's giving you with that break is the opportunity to like reset and get to, sitting down as a family and doing something good. So I guess that's where I am on screens.
So when it comes to screen time for toddlers, what do you think about new age screen time that's been created, the Coco Melons of the world that are highly overstimulating?
There really is no evidence of that idea. So this idea that like old screens moved slower, etc. The shows are different. Coco Melon is better, but it is not worse.
Okay, so this is interesting for a couple of different reasons. One, because anecdotally what we hear from our friends is when they're putting shows like Coco Melon on in front of their kids, their behavior after is wonky and all over the place.
When they pull the screen.
Right.
And versus like when they're putting past time Disney movies a la, Mighty Ducks. Secondarily, do you want to talk about some of the dopamine stuff?
Well, okay, what we have read about with Coco Melon and things like that.
No. Sorry. Yes. The Coco Melon study.
The Coco Melon study was...
whatever. It's not a study. It was my bad.
We watched a TikTok about how it was made. Yeah, right. Yeah. That's where you get your information sometimes. So they put a mom doing mundane house chores, unloading the dishwasher, washing dishes on one screen, and Coco Melon on the other. And they lined up X amount of kids, and they had them watching Coco Melon. And anytime they looked away from Coco Melon to the other TV, they went in and added more lights, more pop-ups, more music, more sound. So it's overstimulating and more addictive was the term we saw. What do you think about that? Do you think there's any truth to that or no?
I don't think that it's really possible to say it's more entertaining. So I think there's a question of like what you mean by sort of addictiveness. Like both of these things are just saying like this show is something people like. Mm-hmm. They like, it's hard to get them to stop because they like it. They look at it because they like it.
You don't think there's any behavioral issues tied to screens?
That is not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is because I think part of this is like we are in a largely evidence-free environment. Mm-hmm. Like it's very hard to measure these things. What I will say is I think that it is true that it is possible to have some amount of screen time, and many kids have some amount of screen time, and it is completely fine. But as a parent, our job is to think about what else could they be doing and when is this going to fit in? And maybe your job is to then also think about, for my particular kid, what is kind of scaffolding behavior that I like? If you show your kid Coco Melon, every time you pull it away, it's a half an hour of screaming, then that's not a good activity for your kid, whether it's the right activity for other kids or not. Maybe your kid needs Mighty Ducks.
And so you also like guardrails around it, not at the table, not an hour before bedtime.
Not before bed, for sure. You want to not before bed, not at the dinner table, not in lieu of outside time.
But Saturday morning cartoon time, which I never understood until we were prepping for this episode. And there were Saturday morning cartoons. And of course there was, because we weren't at school. So right. That gave us our parents a time to like make breakfast or something.
Yeah. I mean, I think that there is a way to combine this with your life, but you do want to deliberately think about what that way is in advance. And I think part of what happens is because people are like, screens are bad, screens are bad, screens are bad, screens are bad. They don't think about, okay, well, we are going to introduce some screens and like, how are we going to do that? So when they finally introduce screens, they give their kids screens and it's just like screens for all at all, like we haven't actually made a plan. Yeah. I would much rather people say, screens are going to be part of our lives. Let's think about where they fit in rather than let's never have screens and all of a sudden just do whatever.
So
that's where we are.
Can I talk through our plan?
Yeah.
Okay. Because would love to hear your thoughts. I guess I do want to kind of tie back to the anxious generation, because I think a lot of the way we're thinking about this is why I alluded to it was the skyrocketing rates of anxiety, depression, and suicide amongst teenagers post 2010, and tying that back to habit development and hobby development. And so, in these early stages, really encouraging a lifestyle for our children that isn't just behind screens and is outdoors, interacting with other people, exercising, so on, reading, so on, and so forth. So I get like the difference in gap, but just kind of wanted to tie it all together. So she hasn't, so our daughter has not been put in front of a screen yet. The game plan there is for the first 2 years of her life, when she doesn't really know what's going on, to avoid screens altogether. Then when we eventually do introduce them at around the 2-year mark, do it 1 for travel, 2 for like treats and special occasions. So as Alex alluded to, Saturday morning cartoons or Christmas or holiday movies. And then limitations on where the screens can and can't be. So
not in the bedroom,
not in the bedroom, not in the bed, not at the table. And am I missing anything?
No, I mean, and past that we don't know, but we are with you on the school of thought of like screens are going to be a part of our world. It's like we love AI because we're like, it's just going to be here.
Sure.
So like understand how you're going to implement that into your kids' lives. And I think that's really important. I like that you say that.
Broadly, I think your plan is great. What I would say is before you start doing this, you need to get like a lot more specific about the second part of it. When you were like, it's a treat, it's the Saturday morning, like Saturday morning cartoons is different from holiday movies. Holiday movies is like 3 times a year. Saturday morning cartoons every week. And so like, I think just sitting down and being like, here are the blocks of time where screens are going to be allowed, like, and literally like writing that down and agreeing, the two of you, like what are the screen time rules and exactly what is the schedule. And then like you want to revisit that every, 6 months because your kid's going to adapt into things.
And then
I like that a lot.
Yeah. Makes a lot of sense. And then what do you think about like minimums where no screens unless? So it's like Saturday morning cartoons on the back end of, an hour of cartoons because you did an hour walk beforehand. Is that,
I mean, like, we don't know that much about that. I think if it were me, I would much like rather than thinking about those as linked, because then your kid, like, what does your kid learn from that? It's a bit similar to nutrition. Like if you say, unless you eat your broccoli, you're not going to get ice cream. Yeah. They're gonna more likely to eat their broccoli in the short term. What have they learned? Like eating broccoli sucks and it's only a thing you do for rewards. Yeah. I would like for us, like we do a lot of hiking with our kids. We did a lot when it was little. It wasn't like you have to go on this hike so you can have screen time. It was just like, we're going on a hike. The activity that we're doing on Saturday morning is we're going to go on a hike. Then it also happens that there's like a half an hour of TV time before lunch. But it's not linked to the hike. Like you have to go on the hike. There's no option. It's not like you can't say like, I'm not going on the hike and then I don't get my screen time. You have to go on the hike. The hike is an activity. We're doing the hike. Full stop.
I love what you just said. Like the broccoli to the ice cream is so easy. Like, so then you just learned broccoli sucks. Like you're teaching them like this is, you have to do this, but then you get to do this. That's really
But I think one thing people have done that's sort of related that I have heard is kind of like you is when this is the little kids are a little older, but like sort of using behavior to earn screen time on. So you say like there's screen time on the weekends and you can earn up to an hour of it. This is like can work for some kids for behavioral modifications as like a kind of like if that's like one. We have never tried that.
What does the data say on the best time to introduce screens to kids?
We don't have a lot of data on this. What I will say is that after sort of sometime between the ages of 2 and 3, your kid starts to be able to learn some things from screens. So that doesn't necessarily mean that's the right age. But if you said like, you know, we actually have some evidence that kids who are like exposed to Sesame Street between the ages of 3 and 5 did better in school in like these early cohorts. Sesame Street turns out to teach your kids letters. And so after sort of sometime after the age of 2, they're going to get more, like they will get more engaged by screens, but also be able to learn more from them. But there isn't, if you're looking for like kids who have screens introduced when they're under 2 do worse or better, like we don't, the data on that is all pretty garbage.
Okay.
And so do you have a personal view?
No. I mean, I like for us, the most valuable thing about screens was the travel. Was like the first time that we could go on a flight for 6 hours and my kid watched TV for like a couple of the hours. That was great. I was glad we introduced TV before that.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking forward to. I do think
It's
that
really
will,
nice.
flights are really tough right now when they want to run around.
Right. Yeah.
And
This is
they
like
can't.
the worst possible age for flights.
It's
Worst age.
That's why she's not here.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is the first time. You guys know I love Quince, and I'm obsessed with my Mongolian cashmere sweater that I wear year after year because it is such high quality, but a fraction of the price of the really expensive brands. And that's because Quince partners direct with factories, so they're able to pass on the discounts to us, but the quality is the exact same. Quince pretty much has your whole list covered. They've got Mongolian cashmere sweaters for $50 when you'd normally pay $200 or more. The kind you will wear on repeat, I'm telling you. They've got Italian wool coats. They look designer. They feel luxurious. And you guys, they have the best men's stuff. Harrison has been wearing their white tees under everything, and they have the best basics. I'm telling you, go to the Quince website. The quality when it arrives, you will be so thrilled. They have the best staples. So find gifts so good you'll want to keep them with Quince. Go to quince.com/Alex for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. Now available in Canada. That's QUINCE.com/Alex to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/Alex.
I want to be mindful of time.
I know. So we've got one more, which is what? Vaccines. Let's spend the next 6 minutes on vaccines.
Yeah. And so if we look at the standard vaccine schedule, what does the data tell you about it? Should you be following it? Are there certain vaccines that parents should be opting out of? Where do we stand?
So in general, the standard vaccine schedule has been used for many decades and it has saved literally hundreds of millions of lives. I think it's worth remembering that a lot of people used to die of measles, not just one person every year, but a lot of people every year. A lot of kids, actually, there's a bunch of deaths from whooping cough still every year, even in the US. So like when we talk about vaccines, it is somehow we have moved away from an understanding of what the purpose of the vaccines is, which is to not get deadly illnesses, which used to kill a lot of people. So let's just say that. There's a lot of evidence for safety of vaccines. A lot of the concerns about vaccines that are raised, like that they cause autism, but also others, really are not supported in the best data. So I generally think people should feel completely comfortable doing the standard childhood vaccine schedule because it makes sense, and then your kid is less likely to get deadly illnesses.
And are there any that should be opted out of?
Generally, no. I think what I would say is that there are some which are more important than others. So if you told me, tell me what's one vaccine that you would, if I told you I'm definitely not doing all of them, which one would you remove? There's been a lot of discussion about the birth dose of hepatitis B. If mom is not a hepatitis B carrier, then pushing off the first dose of hepatitis B to, say, 2 months is totally fine.
And what about spacing the vaccines out?
Spacing the vaccines out is not effective. It's not helpful. So people have this idea that your kid is going to be exposed to too many like
You're just shocking their little
things at the same
systems.
time. Okay, so in a given day, your kid is exposed to vastly greater numbers of like things that are shocking their system than in the vaccine. I mean, your kid is being exposed to viruses and all this stuff all the time. There's viruses everywhere. There's like hundreds of many viruses and other pathogens are all around, and your kid is constantly being exposed to them. So this is not, there's not some kind of like overexposure of stuff. Some people like to space out their vaccines. There's not really any reason to do it. There's not really any strong reason not to do it if you do it sort of quickly enough that you get them basically in time.
And so what's the data that people are pointing to that is on the other side of the argument? Like tying the vaccines to autism?
Yeah, so there's a couple of kinds of data that have tied vaccines to autism. So one is there was a very famous paper from the late 1980s in The Lancet in which a guy named Andrew Wakefield had 12 cases that he had largely made up the details of. It turned out the paper was totally fraudulent, and he linked the MMR vaccine to autism development in these kids. Again, most of the cases had a lot of details fabricated. So that is, although that is still widely cited, that is totally not credible. There are then some more recent papers that will look at, kids who have more vaccines versus fewer vaccines and then different kinds of diagnoses. The issues with most of those papers is that that kids who don't have any vaccines in the U.S. also tend to have a pretty limited exposure to the medical system. So if you sort of think about the characteristics of families who are not vaccinating their kids at all, they also are not often doing other things at the doctor. And so with something like autism, which is largely diagnosed at medical visits, so there's like screening for autism for every 3-year-old. So if you have a group of people who to doctors or getting vaccines, then they're much less likely to show up as diagnosed with autism, but that's not the same as saying they don't have those symptoms. They're just not getting the diagnosis because they're not showing up at the doctor. So a lot of the studies that people point to here have that very basic problem, that the set of people who are getting vaccinated are also seeing doctors for other things, like diagnosis of autism.
I think that there's an anti-vax movement happening.
That
out
is for
there.
sure.
It's and
it's happening.
Yeah, it's happening, and I'm watching it, and I think when we became parents, Tate has all of her vaccines. She's up to date. We were nervous about it and uninformed.
Sure, a lot of people are.
And you're the second person we've now talked to about vaccines, and I just think it's worth saying, like, it's important to vaccinate your kid, because I think what happens if we don't vaccinate them is we're going to be waking up in 5 years with people that are really sick and perhaps dying.
Yeah, I think that's right. I agree with that. But I also want to say, like, I think we need to give people a tremendous amount of grace for that they are asking these questions.
Yes.
I think too often in the public health establishments, like, what do you mean you don't trust vaccines? Like, just get your vaccines. I told you. And I think I would much rather have us say, like, hey, I hear you. Of course you're confused. There is a lot of information out there. Let's try to understand, like, what is the reason for these vaccines? Why do we know the details? I would love if people could engage more, if the sort of experts on the pro-vaccine side could engage more with the things that people are afraid of.
I agree. I think it's the only way to bridge a gap.
It's the only way to bridge a gap
with this type of rhetoric, because if your feed is all anti-vax, it's all you know. Yep. And so you do need somebody to start to bridge it. I think that's confirmation bias that happens a lot of times online, that we all get
echo chambers.
Totally.
And you're someone who's shown that you have no problem going against the status quo and against the way things have been done. And so it does really mean a lot coming from you when you say, hey, these are the things definitely to do versus these are the things to avoid. Because I think one of the challenges that we have, right, is, as we alluded to before, like, we love taking a data-driven approach to our life, but when it comes to the sciences, like, we just don't understand
Yeah,
them.
I mean, I think
and so you could put all the data in front of me, but I can't dissect a good study from a bad study.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think in public
we
health,
need people like you.
In public health, there's sort of so much of the way that communication happens is people just being like, well, trust me, I'm an expert, but I'm not going to explain why. Right. And I think we need, one of the things I've tried to do that I would love other people to do more of is just to be like, hey, you actually need to figure out how you can explain to someone why, even if they're not a person with a PhD in, whatever the field this is. And that should be possible. We should be able to engage with people's concerns and help them understand the evidence. Like that's the job of communication about health.
Totally. And you do a very good job of it.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to ask you to plug yourself again.
So you can find me on Instagram at Prof. Emily Oster. You can find my books in stores, Expecting Better and Crib Sheet. And you can find a lot of my writing at parentdata.org.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We loved both of our chats. You guys, if you're listening to this episode and you want to go to the pregnancy episode, it's the one before. And that's it. We're done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Two Parents in a Podcast powered by Just Media House. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, rate, and review. Stay connected on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and Facebook at Two Parents in a Pod. Welcome to our home. Sorry it's so messy. New episodes Mondays and Thursdays.